Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Total Recall podcast with me, Will Bourne from Rekall Consulting. And as you can see, it is the festive season, hence the festive jumper. My apologies, Shomik. And I'm joined now by one of New York's finest VCs, a dev first startup incubator VC, grower of fantastic companies by the name of BoldStart Ventures. I'm joined by Shomik Ghosh, and it's great to see you, bro.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Will. Great to see you. And I didn't get the sweater memo, so that's something I need to fix for the future.
I've been getting a lot of heat today on this sweater, so I've probably done you a favour if nothing else online when this posts. People will be hammering me, and you'll be like, "Good." Yeah, but look, I wanted to bring you on and talk because, like we were just talking about prior to hitting the record button, one hell of a year, and I'm really actually interested to hear your side of what 2023 has looked like from a bold start perspective and what your journey has been post-COVID through 2023, through the crashes of XBB Bank and all of the things that have happened, which people are like, Jesus Christ, all that happened in like, what, 1 year, 2 years? So talk to me, bro, tell me.
Yeah, well, indeed, what a crazy year. And for the founders and teams out there and the advisors like yourself, Will, it's just been absolutely wild. And not just this year, right? I think even starting with COVID, uh, a lot of people used to say like, oh, you haven't experienced anything until you went through the dot-com bubble or until you went through 2008 or something like that. And it's just like, well, you kind of had a little bit of everything in the past 3 or 4 years, right? Unfortunately, from things like global wars to massive changes in the economy, in interest rates, in health, and how your families would be doing, just insane. So, but what I guess what we do at BoldStart is we back technical founders typically in enterprise software, and we back them from the earliest stages. So literally, we like to say we do it at inception. That means pre-product, early in product, many times even before the company's incorporated. We're talking with the founders to help them ideate on the idea and then go and build the business. And we do that globally. So all across the U.S., all across Europe, and all across Israel, as you know, from working with some of our customers, from some of our companies as customers to you in different areas. So, in that context, I would say what's really interesting about the time right now is the best time to start a company is right now. The reason being, what happened in 2020 was when you started a company, or even 2019, when you started a company, everybody was scaling super fast. And so you had to kind of almost keep up with the market. So you were raising rounds of funding, you were hiring a bunch, you were doing these sort of things, and a lot of companies were actually hiring ahead of where their product market fit actually was. And so unfortunately, what that leads to is companies that don't necessarily have the staying power because they didn't build the cultures properly, the systems properly, and frankly, the product and customer attraction in that way. And what's happening now is actually the opposite. So now they're saying, hey, you know, do it measured and do it alongside the product growth. And what's happening out of this is actually much stronger companies are being built and with much more durable staying power to be able to have those employees, uh, have longer careers at the company, and then also to be able to enable many more future hires because of that stable base. And so that's what's really exciting is like right now, coming into building a new company at this moment, you get to be well capitalized. You get to hire your early team that is coming from, I mean, frankly, you could pick great engineers, great early hires, because a lot of people are unfortunately on the market looking for roles, but
Mm.
that also is great for the people who are hiring, right? Because they have the ability to find really really good candidates, and so I think that's where it gets really exciting. It's like you have these massive shifts happening in the technology, of course, with AI. I'm sure we'll talk about that, but then also this ability to hire great talent that for the first time is kind of picking up themselves from this crazy rush over that we've had over the past 3 years and kind of saying, hey, what do we want to do with the rest of our careers? And a lot of them are saying we want to go and take that early leap and that early journey and bet on ourselves.
And how do you think that's impacting, if you to look into these companies from a funder perspective? When you're looking at the teams, when you're looking at the hiring strategy, and at what point they need to make these hires, how much of an impact does it have on your not opinion, because I suppose it's not an opinion, it's your assessment of their startup plan, their go-to-market plan, when they're talking about the talent that they want to bring on board and the talent that they already have? How much of an impact does it have on their ability to raise capital?
Yeah, I mean, it's a key component, right? Like when we're partnering with founders, we want to understand how they're thinking about the key hires that they need to make. And that really is in the context of the milestones that they need to hit. So where we're investing at inception, you're just building out the product. So it's even just like what type of hires, what type of engineers do you need to actually build the MVP that you'll get out into the world? And we want the founders to understand that, right? Because if they don't, then that's something that probably needs a little bit more work to understand, hey, uh, you know, what sort of back-end engineers do you need? What sort of front-end engineers do you need? Do you need a designer to work with those front-end engineers to, put a UI together, right? All those sort of pieces are very important to understand. So we're looking at that literally from day zero, and then also for future rounds of funding, right? People don't want to just give you money just to give you money. It may seem like that, sometimes from some of the rounds that get announced, but in reality, everything is coming from uh, the market size, uh, the difficulty around building the product and distributing the product, and thinking about all of that in that context. And so the funding actually matches the constraints of the startup. So if the startup is saying, "Hey, listen, we've got a wait list of customers, and they're all waiting for if we ship this feature, or if we can just make it more scalable or whatever." Okay, well then that's your need for engineers. And then it's like, hey, you know, we've got a lot of traction, but it's been founder-led sales to date. Now we think we can start to grow that with some early sales hires with a marketing team to help supplement the leads and so on and so forth. And so that all of a sudden starts to say, okay, well, now you can start to invest more in distribution. And then also you have the product and R&D side that you can invest in as well. And so that's kind of what we're always looking for, is at each stage, how does the hiring plan match up to the funding ask and need, and then
Mhm.
also what that could do for the business in terms of the milestones you could hit.
Right. Okay. And I suppose, how closely are you then like checking back in on those business plans and how they're tracking against their performance from an investor's perspective? Are you holding them to their own kind of, are you making them accountable for, you said you're going to make this hire, this hasn't happened, why hasn't it happened? Are you putting pressure on them like that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, right, as you know, working with a lot of folks, right, especially I think technical founders will sometimes say like, oh, we think we think we can do this, right? And you're like, okay, yeah, but maybe don't, right? There's other things you could focus on, and this could be a key hire that could help out. And in other cases, it's simply they don't know how to hire that role. Like for example, if you're someone who's never hired your first AE, and now you're going out and you're being tasked with, hey, go and find this, right? That's a pretty hard thing to freaking do.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times too, that's where we're definitely tracking that, but it's also more so one, helping the founder realize why that could help them and push the business forward, but also two, putting the resources around them to make sure that they can understand, hey, for hiring that first AE, what does a good one look like? How should
Mm.
we think about hiring that? What sort of questions should we ask? You know, what has worked for different companies, right? And so what we're trying to do is surround them with founders who have gone through that journey,
Mhm.
with advisors who can kind of send them, relevant candidates and things like that, like yourself, and then also with previous first sales hires, right? Who can say, hey, this is what I was really good at this company,
Mm.
and these are the questions that I was asked or that I would want to be asked, and so that those sort of things all help the founders to understand what they're doing.
And if you take it back, the hiring of talent, I suppose, comes quite a few steps into the business plan. If you go right back to the start, if you're talking to some of these organizations, I can imagine you've assessed a lot this year with a lot of, like you say, a lot of tech layoffs, typically what will inherently drive innovation into startups. They're going to try and come up with some funding to back their own idea. In that first instance where you're assessing a startup's plan, they've got the idea in their mind, they don't quite know how to get that to a viable product. What's your kind of assessment criteria there? There's loads of people that might be watching this thinking, I've got a great idea, but I don't know what to do. What would you say there?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where you just got to talk to your network and also reach out to others that you think could help you. Um, Again, a key part of a founder's journey is trying to figure out what is needed to de-risk each stage, especially if you're going on the venture path, right? Because if you're going on the venture path, you're getting on the treadmill, right? And it's just like it's going to be continuously running as fast as possible, pretty much for forever. Like it
Yeah,
doesn't really stop. Even when you IPO, like it's still you're
yeah.
still sprinting as hard as you can. And so um, if you opt into that journey, then the key is like your learning rate has to compound at such an incredible velocity that it's really challenging. But also the great thing about, and I'll say broadly Silicon Valley, I don't mean that just in California, but the tech ecosystem as a whole across the world, um, everyone really wants to help each other because it's still a as much as tech has had a huge impact over the past years, it's still a small business. It's still, a small amount of companies compared to tire retailers or there's a bunch of other areas. So I think everyone wants to help each other out, and utilizing that network is really important for getting up that learning curve at each stage, because at each stage is going to be different. Whether you're two founders in a room trying to figure out, well, how do we, get to our first product,
Yeah.
right? Or if you are, now a founder who is running 100-person org, and now you're trying to figure out how to scale that to 500. I mean,
Hmm.
oh my God, those are both such hard things to figure out and go through. And so that's really where you got to lean on as many advisors as you can. I mean, now there's a lot of blog posts and podcasts and things that you can read, and you basically just take snippets of that and start to construct, hey, you know, here's how I would do it based on my culture, based on what I get excited about, and start to build out from there.
How much do you think strategy now in the current climate, in the current kind of red ocean, blue ocean discussion plays a big part? You know, you really have to come in very well versed in, I suppose, what might be going into, why you're going there, what the actual current landscape looks like, where it's going to be in 12 months' time. Am I actually building a product here that somebody wants, and will they pay for it? More importantly, whilst keeping it simple. You know, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, so we broadly like to think about it in the enterprise software space. We think about it in two ways. So there's one that's kind of like reimagining existing category, and then one that is, let's call it category creation, right? A completely new area. And these have, a variety of different things. And so, for example, we have uh, a company called Delibso, which is a WebAssembly developer tooling company. And they are innovating ahead of the market right now, right? They're building developer tools that developers will need currently and also will need in the future as they start to adopt WebAssembly in certain use cases. And that is something where you kind of have to not only build the product, but you have to evangelize, and you have to help people see, oh, wow, this is something I could do that I didn't realize before. And then you can say, hey, by the way, this product will help you use that in production for, for various use cases as you kind of do that. But first, you kind of almost have to show them that. And so when you're building in a new category, like it's not easy. It certainly takes a lot of work. Um, but if you do it correctly, it can have great outcomes. Like the team at Delipso, they're not funded by or part of a YC or anything, but they've had, uh, I don't know exactly how many posts, but I think there's like 6 posts that they've written that have trended on the front page of Hacker News. And that again goes to they're just doing interesting stuff that people get
Mm.
excited about, right? And so that's where that category creation, it's like you're going to be putting out content, you're going to be evangelizing the space, trying to get people to think about it. Now, on the flip side, we have a company called Dope Security, which, Zscaler, Palo Alto Networks, Netscope, and a bunch of other companies that already exist at meaningful scale. They're public companies or they're soon to be public companies, and they're driving things really, really forward in what's called SASE security. And Dope, kind of looked at what was happening with that category and said, you know what? There's certain technological things that right now change how those products were built. They were built, 10 years ago, and that was before the advent of Kubernetes. That was before modern containerization through Docker, before some of these core infrastructure building blocks. And so
Mm.
sometimes you can take those and start to form a new way to build an existing product. And in their case, it's the laptops are a lot more powerful and mobile devices, so you can process a lot more things locally on the endpoint.
Yeah.
And then meanwhile, you can send everything else directly to the cloud. And that means less security risks in terms of, having to send it to a data center, then having to send it to the cloud, and then sending it back and then send it to the laptop. So less security risk, quicker time to value, easier setup, all those sort of things, right? So that's where it's like you have these two examples that I just mentioned with those companies, but it's like either you're thinking about, hey, new category creation where
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of almost taking some market timing risk, right? But
Mm.
also the payoff is huge if you get it right. And then the other way is kind of reimagining an existing category where you really have to think about, kind of what is the why now? What has changed such that you can go and disrupt the current incumbents? And usually that comes from some sort of architecture change or change.
And how do you, within that process, because obviously there comes a point in time where the product is live and it's on the shelf. Do you advise your clients to iterate further? Because one great lesson that I learned was with a really high profile startup, and I was building them a team. And one of the common questions that was coming up was, right, okay, it's a great product now, but it's very quickly going to run out of runway. It's going to very quickly become outdated. So what's the next iteration? And when I took that back to this particular customer, I was kind of pushed back to say, well, it's a great product. So I'm kind of interested to see how that process looks and how you would walk somebody through that to say, well, it's a great product now. This tool, it's in the blue ocean, it's in the red ocean, wherever it sits. But think about iteration. How do you kind of preempt that?
I mean, the tech world is a graveyard full of great products that didn't figure out distribution, right?
Mm,
That's the unfortunate part about all of this is you could build the best product in the world, and if you haven't figured out distribution, it doesn't matter.
yeah.
And so a lot of times, what you need to be focusing on at the earliest stages is how you can get product and go to market to evolve together. Um, what that means. So let's say if you are building a top-down security product, right? Um, we have Protect AI in the AI security space, right? They are building something that is a CISO or head of security or VPN type sale, because it affects the whole org. All the models that will be used will be affected and monitored by
Mm,
Protect. And so if that's the case, right, it would be really weird if all of a sudden Protect was like, well, hey, we're making this a freemium product that you can try on the website, and they start opening up a marketing funnel to get people to start trying it out in that way. Like that doesn't work with the buyer motion. That doesn't work with the what the product does, how it affects the org, stuff like that. So I think for founders, what we sometimes see this, we see this mismatch in terms of people are like looking at, Notion or Figma, and they're like, oh yeah, PLG, we're gonna go do this. And it's like, okay, but your product approach really has to map to that and your end user and how the buyer journey works, right? And if it doesn't, those are discordant things. You're going to end up in a really bad path because you're trying to force something that literally doesn't work in terms of how people would evaluate the product and stuff like that. So that's the key for founders is really to look at your product, put yourself in the end user shoes. Hopefully you've even lived the pain before,
mm.
and then start to say, well, how would I adopt this product, right? And if it's, hey, I would need four stakeholders to approve this to go and do it. Okay, well then forget about PLG, right? Focus much more on, hey, this is going to be an enterprise sale. How do I speak to the persona that I need to talk to at the higher level org? And then how do I also, make it so that it's so easy for those higher level folks to then tell their ICs, hey, test out this product. I think it's kind of interesting, and they should be able to test it out, see the value, and be like, yes, this is awesome. Let's go do this, right? But that's how you need to be thinking about it. Map product and
Absolutely.
go to market very closely.
And is it? Would you say because the way you speak about it seems very process driven. There seems to be a almost like a template ingrained in the way that you talk about it. And I was reading about your Dev First Founder toolkit. Is that kind of a process that you've learned over the course of time, having worked with as many startups as you have? And we were talking about before the call some fantastic success stories and some relative success stories in terms of what they were looking for. In that Dev First Founder toolkit that BoldStart has created, is there almost like a cookie cutter, right? This is your first stage to exit. This is your first stage to your market event that you kind of flow somebody through.
Yeah, I mean, certainly for dev tools founders, there can be a lot of similarities with their companies. That dev tools founder toolkit is actually the brainchild of one of my colleagues, Anna Debenham, who's based in London actually. So she's right in your neck of the woods. And she was
Represent.
actually she was employee four at Sneak, right? So she has seen it from, literally ground zero to
Mm,
scale. And so a lot of what she's doing is frankly reflecting the journey and the path that she and the Sneak team has been through. And then now, of course, as she's advising many different companies in the BoldStart portfolio, she is also collecting questions and common issues that are coming up. And then basically she's trying to externalize those in terms of, hey, here's how you should think about doing that. And so, yes, there are playbooks that can be created. The only thing I would say is, once again, like, not all open source companies are the same, right? Like it just, you could have different buyers. You could be open sourcing it for different reasons. Like
mm,
some companies, uh, for example, a lot of application SaaS that is open sourced, right? Let's say you're a calendar app and you're open sourcing the calendar. That's almost done from more of a marketing standpoint than it is from a real user need to have the calendar app open sourced, right? And so that's very different in terms of what that go to market motion means, how you should invest in the open source, what product, do and business model do you take on versus something that is, say a core developer tool, right, on the infrastructure side, where you're open sourcing it because developers, no matter what, will be like, no, we need to see the code, we need to try it out, we need to experiment. And by the way, maybe we don't want to use a cloud hosted version because we want to use it in an on-prem instance where we can control the security and stuff like that, right? So
yeah.
those are different motions. And so those are actually, there's different playbooks around those businesses, um,
Mm,
based on, again, who's the end buyer, what's the user, what's the product approach, all these sort of things. So you constantly need to be thinking about that. And unfortunately, there's no one easy answer, because otherwise then everyone would be doing it, right? But it's hard. And so each time, that's where you need to think through, what does that look like?
that comes back to you investing in the right kind of person. How strategic a mind is this person actually got? I suppose you do also work with people who are just very skilled engineers, but perhaps they lack that strategic piece to go and build a map of the future almost, where you then add your expertise on top of that to give them that peace of mind, right? Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's let's just put it this way. Like if we as VCs are having like an outsized impact in terms of, helping the company, that there's probably something wrong, right? Because
Yeah.
we aren't that smart, but we certainly have we certainly have learned experiences from a bunch of different companies, a bunch of different products and business models. And so we're constantly trying to look across those, right, to see what are patterns, what are pitfalls and things like that to help advise the founders on what is occurring. But in
Mm,
the end, I mean, the reason it's so hard to be a founder is it's just, you are freaking learning 24/7. And it doesn't matter what somebody will say to you until you've learned and gone through the experience yourself. Sometimes even as VCs, we will see a pitfall is coming and we will say, hey, this is a potential outcome if you go down this path.
yeah.
But at the same time, sometimes those moments are really important for the founders to go through themselves,
Yeah.
because then they get a learning that then helps them actually for way into the future. And you've seen
Yeah.
this with hiring, right? It's like being, hiring somebody that maybe had the resume or has, like, all this crazy experience, but you're not getting the sense that they're maybe, as aligned to what you think they would need to be doing this, but you're still like, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make that hire, right?
Yeah.
We've
Yeah.
seen that how many times, and you can tell the founders, hey, this is not what you should do, but still the founders have to experience that for themselves.
I, I reflect on my own experiences this year. In a bootstrapped business, as this is my second startup. The first was funded. This one is now with my own money, and the stresses that comes with that. The ability to adapt very quickly, make quick decisions, but learn and apply that knowledge as what for me has helped me survive and helped my business survive this year, along with some great customers, of course. But some of the content that I've digested, from I read a great book called Rock the Recession, which I learned a hell of a lot from, about two tech founders who survived. One survived the '08 bubble burst and one didn't, and their reflections on that. It's a great book to anybody listening, who's running a business. The Mom Test, I read that this year, and that's taught me a lot about just getting in the mindset of the people that I'm talking to and what they actually go through to build their business, to build the product, to build a PLG, to build a top down, to how they're going about it. I actually understand the challenges that they go through because it's very different. I'm a services business, they're a product business. Um, and I think the people that I've seen this year grow successfully are the people that have stepped back and looked above the parapet down and thought, right, strategically now I need to bring this person at this time. I need to do this with the product. I need to take this to enterprise from open source, and this is how we go about doing it. It's been almost like the year of adapting. It's been like the year of recognizing that it's a bit of a shitstorm out there, and this is how we're going to weather it and actually prosper and move out the other side. I'm sure you've seen that in your portfolio the same.
Yeah, I mean, I think this has been the most resilient time that I've seen from founders pretty much ever. I mean, just again, we talked about you went through a pandemic where you're worried about your health. Then we go through a crazy roaring boom time where like you're just trying to scale as quickly as possible. Then the market shifts in a matter of, months to becoming now a kind of a recessionary do more with less sort of environment.
Yeah.
And then meanwhile, there's also wars starting all over the world. Like it is just freaking insane. And I know you work with a lot of Israeli teams, and I just want to say specifically to them, it has been some of the most amazing things that I've seen, just absolutely awe-inspiring in terms of the stuff that the absolute shit that they are going through. I mean, losing family members, being in reserves, having co-founders in active duty,
Yeah.
in the line of fire and stuff like that, and still they are saying, hey, we're not going to let this change our way of life and go and build businesses and do it thoughtfully. And it is just every single day I wake up and, if I think my life is hard, I just think to some of the founders that, are in Israel, are in Ukraine, are in some of these areas, and just
Yeah.
their resilience, their perseverance. It's just absolutely inspiring.
Great. Like you mentioned, I've got some great customers in Israel, and what I've noticed this year, it's the kindness for me. Like I've had a Zoom call now with a customer is a friend. He's effectively put an hour of his own time aside to help me do something for my own personal life, and he just doesn't have to do that. He doesn't need to do that. And I just think it's like I can't disagree with anything you said. The community has completely blown me away this year with how they've adapted, overcome, and still go forward, press forward, and are still broad enough to kind of just want to help me. Just a recruiter from Birmingham, and it's great. It's a great thing to see. And I do hope that next year more innovation comes and there are more people that aren't actually put off about going into a startup. I see a lot of people now having anxiety around setting up a company, anxiety around joining a startup company. There's a lot of people that are scrambling for round B companies and above because they think there's a safety there, which I think this year, if you actually look at it, doesn't really exist. So I think there's an interesting year to come next year. And how are you shaping up for next year? How are you going into as a VC, as an incubator, as a mentor to anybody looking to start a company? How are you preparing, and what's the message that you're going to give to people in 2024 going into that new year?
Yeah, I think as I said earlier, this is one of the best times I've ever seen to start a company. Again, you have an abundance of talent, of very talented people who are looking for jobs. Now, some of them may be looking for safety, but some others may be actually willing to embrace new risks because they realize that the opportunities are there and it's something that they haven't considered before. And so it is a very good time to be hiring right now, especially as an early team, because you can hire great folks. You can build with a lean team, which is the most fun, right? You don't have the managerial duties. You don't have anything like that. So literally starting companies right now is probably the most fun times, if you can call it that, that you will have in this business and in this scaling journey. Of course, obviously, as you start to scale, all the stuff will start to come in just as it always does. And I certainly don't think it will get any easier as you do that because I don't think like there's no magic switch that's going to flip and all of a sudden we're going to say, hey, we're back to 2020, right? And oh, okay, it's uh, everyone's getting free money and so on and so forth. Like it's going to be pretty hard to get back to those times. And so we're going to be in this, we have to build real businesses, which doesn't necessarily mean you have to be profitable, but you do have to show the future investor the line of sight to profitability, right? Which
Yeah.
goes to, is the product and the go-to-market working together? Are you thinking about sales cycles? Are you thinking about land and expand, right? The biggest thing I will tell founders going into this I won't even say new environment because we're in it now, but like this current environment that will continue is understand and have intense empathy for your end user and your customer. And what that means is, each customer is going to their CFO, is going to their manager, is going to, whoever their leader is and asking, hey, this would really help me in my job. And I think this would help my team as well. Can we go and buy this? Well, that person's trying to manage the overall P&L just like everybody else is and trying to make sure that's happening efficiently. So understanding that buyer and saying, you know what, I'm going to help you out here. Could we scope this to, maybe the smallest subset of your team, right? You have 100 people. Maybe let's do it on a team of 10 or 20. We can do a smaller contract size. Let's prove the value to you. And then if that works, then we can roll out an enterprise-wide thing. But at least you'll be able to see the value first so you can understand why this will drive efficiencies for your business. And if you do that, that is what founders need to be thinking about. Any way possible to get the customers to experience the value that you can bring, and then start to think about the size of the contracts and things later once you've proven the value, because that works for the customer as well, right? That's
Mm.
how they're thinking about it as well. So that's my key tip for everyone. Land and expand, much more important. Understand pricing things. 100K is typically the threshold for where you need approval. And so, you know, if you put in a 75K contract, right, that might be something, a way to get in the door, and then you can start to expand that in the future. Of course, that's a generalized statement. It all depends on, if you're talking to, a large bank, it may be completely different than if you're talking to a retail mom and pop store.
Nice, good point to finish on, I think. And I think there's a lot of workshops and there's a lot of events that I see BoldStart run throughout the course of the year. So is there a link? Is there some way that people, aspiring founders can actually sign up to your events? Or do you need to be a member of BoldStart to actually to be a participant in those? Participate in those.
No, I mean, so most of our events are open. They kind of happen ad hoc as it just around whether it's around a conference, whether it's around a specific founder or a enterprise executive or whatever. We kind of organize them that way. But I think the way to get in touch with us is, one, if you just go to boldstart.vc, that's our website. There's a bunch of info there. We've spent a lot of time designing the website. It has like a Git-like flow to it and things like that. So it really shows the ethos of what we're about.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're available on podcasts. I have my own podcast, Software Snack Bites. My colleague Ed writes a very popular weekly newsletter called What's Hot in IT and VC, and so there's various ways to keep in touch. We're trying to share our learnings through these methods.
Yeah.
Anna with her DevTools podcast, DevTools newsletter and blog posts. And so these are all ways that we're trying to help founders, one, discover us, but two, also help them on their journey. And we're pretty all over on the internet, so just come and check us out.
I'll put the links in the comments below so that anybody listening can go and just start to follow and absorb your content, because it's going to be great content. Having heard some of your success stories for the year in a tough market. But I mean, it's been wonderful to talk to you. I've got a list of things in front of me that we haven't even scratched the surface of. So we could have probably spoke for another hour or two, but I'll let you go and enjoy the rest of your day. And it's been a pleasure. I enjoy these kind of conversations where I myself get to put myself in your perspective. Obviously we are staffing out portfolio companies, so it's great to see how you think from an investor's perspective. I can then take that into various conversations and add significant value, which is my goal. So again, thank you for your time. It was good to talk to you. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. Thanks for helping some of our companies and also others just in the world to hire. I think it's incredibly important, especially as we're talking about with this time. Talent has never been more important. So thanks for what you're doing, and next time I'll wear an ugly sweater just so we can match.
Good to see you, man. Take
Yeah,
care.
good to see you. Bye.